It is recording now, so go on.
Cool, thank you. Hi, my name's Lee. I'm the tech lead for the origami team, and we're a team who own Origami. We maintain, sorry Alex, I caught you right, really distracting you for some reason.
Sorry.
I hope that was nice. Origami includes a collection of front-end components, tools and services that make up digital products at the FT. People contribute to Origami, but we're sort of the main team that look after it. And today I'm here to talk about shared capabilities, cross-group collaboration, how they enable scale and efficiency here at the FT, and in particular in relation to creating new products with reusable front-end components, bespoke brands, or unique one-off experiences. And to help, I'm going to use a really contrived metaphor of baking bread. So if you didn't notice already, there's some babka over there, chocolate and cinnamon. Feel free to grab some. So back in 2018, for some reason, I decided I wanted to start baking bread. For some reason, I decided I wanted to do a sourdough. I looked a lot younger there. The FT has really aged me. You start by creating your starter, flour, water, leave it out for a bit until yeast in the air colonize it. You sort of have to feed it. And after a few weeks, I was able to start making my first bread, my little first bread baby there. And I make bread every week, sometimes multiple times a week. And so I got really familiar with the flour and the water, the salt, ingredients, the feel for the dough, the temperature and how that affects rise, as well as the tools and the techniques. I got good at really consistently creating bread. And before long, I realized that I didn't even need to look up new recipes. I was able to really quickly create a totally new bread with the same sort of components. All of these photos, by the way, no filter, they were for personal use, and how they've made it into this slide, I don't know how I let that happen. So to the left, we have a white sort of sourdough, tangy, open. And to the right, we have a much denser bread, wholemeal wheats, rye flakes, linseed, just whatever I want to throw at it. Probably really good for digestion. Also really good on toast, very soft. I kind of realized I've got a reusable capability here. I can use the same tools and techniques, basically the same recipe in different steps. So it got me thinking about origami, because obviously I connect everything back to origami because I've been in this job too long. And origami components, in a similar way, are these reusable pieces of user interface that we can put together in different ways to produce digital products at the FT. Together with our brand guidelines, design tooling, and documentation, they make up our design system. And teams across the FT put in these components, again, they create, instead of new bread, they create new products. So for example, you might have a component like table, includes some complex behavior, so it's sortable, it's responsive, it's expandable, and there's sort of business logic wrapped up in this too. So if you throw in some dates that are formatted to sort of our editorial style, the table knows how to parse that and can sort dates accordingly. And then in a similar way, components like this, pagination in no buttons, it's not a complex technical component, but it encapsulates some complex design thinking that's gone into it in terms of like what you should display when. And you can see these components used all across the FT. To the top there, we have a sign-up page that's delivered internally by the membership team. And to the bottom right there, we have the ETF hub that's delivered by a third-party Track Insight, and they're using different technologies to deliver that. But both use origami to quite quickly create a consistent FT product. And as a user moving across those pages, you don't know that they're delivered by a different team, maybe in a different country, using different technologies. And so there's some of the shared components between them. So consistent components help us to deliver reliable, trusted user experience. It allows us to collaborate better with third parties, deliver more quickly, and as a user, you are familiar with the different components of that product. As you move around the page, you have a sort of a consistent, understandable experience. But we can stretch the dough with this awful metaphor further. And it turns out I could use the same dough to make different kinds of bread too. So if I just like squash it down a bit, I can make pizza, focaccia. Okay, the metaphor breaks down a little bit. It's a bit wetter. I might add a little bit of oil, but basically it's the same. I was able to really quickly switch to making pizza and focaccia by using my sourdough as this sort of like foundational base. And it's kind of how origami components came to support internal branding. So to the left, we have the ft.com sign-up page again. And to the right, we have an internal tool called Toggler. And the Toggler lets you turn experimental features of ft.com on or off. So that's kind of an internal tool behind the scenes. But these share components again. So across these two bands, you're using the same components, but one has a slightly different sort of look and feel. So it's a shared capability there. So with the core brand and the internal brand support, our components enable groups to collaborate across these different brands. So when someone in customer products sort of notices maybe an accessibility issue with Otable, we can fix that in Otable for ft.com, and that automatically flows through to our internal tools and products. Likewise, internal tools have more data. They can't speak. They have more data-heavy tables. They're more likely to pick up performance issues that we can fix for them, and that will feed through to our readers on ft.com. So we can focus on building a high-quality component once rather than multiple times and roll that out across the organization. But it also benefits our users because we're building a higher quality product. But once you're baking pizza, it's really hard to stop there. You can change a few toppings and get this surprisingly unique experience. So last summer, I finally got some outdoor space and I started growing my own herbs and fruit. This entire talk is just a massive humble brag, and it's for me being really self-indulgent. But it really contributed to me playing around with my pizza recipe. And like I made this roast squash, garlic sort of base instead of tomato, and put on some like sage from the garden with some blue cheese, and it was a totally different experience. But I was still basing it on my normal sourdough pizza recipe. And in the same way, when we're looking at our components, we can apply different sort of styles as toppings to give a very different experience. You can see here between our internal and our core brand, they're actually kind of similar. We're just changing a couple of colors here and there. It's not going to win any awards for being a really exciting sort of brand divergence. But what could our components look like in the FT in the future if we were able to improve this capability? Can we scale the principle further to support new brands? I really think we can. But there are challenges. If we take a button like this, for example, what toppings could we adjust to represent the brand? Examples could include things like a background color, text color, font family, padding, that kind of thing. You could go further and think about like animations or how the user actually interacts with that button, but let's keep it simple and assume there's 7 for now. We need to find those for each state of the button. There are multiple, and we have more than one button. Maybe we have a different style for a dark background. So if we have all of those states, 2 buttons supporting 2 brands with all of these customization options, we end up with 168 brand decisions to encode somewhere and to track and manage. So that's quite a lot. For a little button. So we need to start thinking about our tooling. Tools can help here. One of the main ones that I'm thinking a lot about is design tokens. And these are kind of like snazzy variables that let you define those brand properties, your typography, your color, your spacing scale. And then you can compile them using a token translation tool to multiple platforms. So that could be for the web, creating Sass or CSS. Could be to native SDKs, or it could be to your design tooling or even documentation. We've already done a list prototype with FT Edit last year to explore how we can create native SDKs. And it's pretty fun when you see it in action. More on that later. And that's exactly what other companies use too. So Newskit from News UK support very different brands across their quite large organization with very different publications using design tokens. You can see some of their documentation here, and they talk about a flexible theming system to enable brands to retain their unique identity. BT's Loop design system, which I think is a work in progress, does the same thing using design tokens. So this video here that is playing good. shows BT, EE, and PlusNet being supported with the same components, and they're switching the brand here. So you can see EE's look there is very different to how BT's looked, or I think we're about to see PlusNet. Drum roll. Oh, I can't be bothered. I've got no time. Oh, there it is. Okay. So you can support very different brands using the same components. And we can totally do the same thing here at the FT. We have lots of specialist title brands, for example. You can see the banker here that's using Cookie Message. And it doesn't, Cookie Message is origami component, but it doesn't fit with this brand at all. It's very out of place. And Origami isn't able to support these brands at the moment. And that's why specialist titles are working on their own design system to support their brands. But this is a lot of duplicated effort. We should be able to work together as one team on one shared design system. But it's not just about new brands, you've got sub-brands too. So partner content wants to be able to use core brand components like header, but they want to be able to pull through styles of their partner brand. Also things like enterprise. They might want to have a sort of a slant on the normal B2C core brand. And that could be supported with a foundational base using something like design tokens. And it's also about unique experiences within a brand. So the FT app, for example, has this experimental dark mode. It works by inverting all colors, which is pretty imprecise. You have elements that just completely break. We have to do a lot of like hacking around those to sort of fix the worst problems. And then you have things like this live label that neither speaks to me of the FT or of it being live. It hasn't been designed. It's this kind of strange teal color. With something like design tokens, we could build features like this more thoughtfully and actually support them so they're not behind some experimental feature flag. And so here's a proof of concept of that last year using macOS there to toggle between light and dark mode, and it's changing the colors there in the background and our FT logo. So tools and techniques like design tokens allow us to share capabilities across more brands. And this is how we scale. It's how we release more brands and unique experiences than we would otherwise be able to support. So switching from baking loaves of bread to baking pizza was easy, partly due to the tools that were involved. They were kind of the same. After making pizza, I was inspired by Bake Off to bake some bagels, and even that used kind of the same tools as before. The pot that I normally put in the oven, I boiled them in. I didn't know how about this analogy, but we need consistent tools and documentation to support our design system too. And again, design tokens help here because you synchronize not just with your production code, but also with your documentation and your design tooling. It allows us to work with the same tools regardless of the brand that we're working on, so teams or members of teams can switch around and use consistent tools. And so this is exactly what Condé Nast do. This is Figma, some design tooling. You can see they've got a design in the center there, and they've got this little tool using, again, powered by design tokens. So they can switch a design from like Vogue US to like Wired US. So if you're working on those two brands, you've got the same components available, you've got the same tools available, and you can toggle between them. And again, that's synchronized with production code. It's funny, we actually came to the same solution independently, although Condé Nast are way further ahead. This little prototype here shows syncing origami design tokens with Figma, and you can see it's pulled in all of our colors and typographic styles and spacing values too. Next. Okay, and this screenshot again shows like SAS variables that we've generated against the design tooling that also includes the same value. So you have that shared language between design and engineering. And because of that, it allows designers and engineers to collaborate together more effectively, even though you're using different tools because you're in different disciplines, you have the same language. So that handover process becomes much smoother. But then it's also about designers moving between different brands and having the same capabilities and the same tools available to them that are familiar, and the same for engineers too. So I really started stretching this metaphor too far, and it started breaking down at this point. So eventually I was making more unique breads, as a treat rather than this regular thing. Some of them didn't turn out so well. These are a bit wonky. They're using tarragon from my garden and other Mediterranean herbs, so I was pretty happy with them. But even though they turned out a little bit misshapen, it was really nice to be a little bit more creative and try creating this bread with these twists. And the same applies to components. It's kind of like how the data visualization team use origami alongside their excellent visual journalism here. So you can see some sort of consistency coming through, but then also this like excellent animation. I think good design system is there to empower creativity by handling the everyday stuff and providing a solid foundation for teams to work from, so that you can focus on what matters and create some amazing stuff around that. And sometimes I make bread so different, I wonder if it's even a bread at all. I kind of feel like this one needs a content warning because it's a really ugly photo. To the left, we have sourdough crumpets with a nasturtium, sunflower, and garlic pesto, served with a side of soy sauce, braised aubergine, and mushroom with a little drizzle of the finest chili oil. I made it for me, not for you. I don't know how this photo was. It was great, I thought. But I wonder if these bakes should become part of my regular repertoire. Should I be serving them to guests? I think we ask similar questions when we look at components. Is this a reusable capability? These are the kind of steps that we look to when we're thinking about adding a new component or a new reusable capability. First is that decision stage. Should this actually be a component? If it's going to be a new component, like what brands is that for? Do we need to think about the brand options and what should they be? Or is it a variant of an existing component, an additional thing that can be rolled out? Or are we making a change, or is there something already there that could meet a need? Do we actually need to make a component? And we have steps like then adding that to our design UI kit. An engineer can't build with a reusable component if nobody's designed with it, if they haven't got a design that uses it. We need usage docs around that. So from the technical side, which origami is reasonably good at, but also design guideline side, which we're really lacking on. If you know how to use a component, but you don't know where or why to use it, you can then use it in a sort of incorrect or way that the designer didn't intend and create some really awful experiences. We've got to do the tech build. We've got to review it because it's going to be used everywhere. We want to make sure that it's accessible, that it has a sensible API, that it's going to be maintainable. And then we have to do the rollout and the comms. So again, if it's like a new capability, maybe just one team needs to go and implement that. But it could also be something that would affect groups all across the FT, and we have to think about how we're going to align that with product roadmaps, how we're going to communicate that and bring everybody along at the same time. If it's a new capability that we want to be adopted, maybe we want to run some workshops to help that adoption. And origami can't do all of these jobs alone. Especially with regular day-to-day work, whether that's supporting origami users or running workshops or maintaining the other services that we have. We're a very small team, currently 2 engineers, soon to be 3 again, which is good. We also have Cam's part-time delivery role, which isn't enough to do all of those jobs. And it's also not just about the time, but also the authority and the expertise. Those first 3 there, making a decision, UI kit, usage documentation, they're really design heavy. We need design involvement in that. But the FT has no dedicated design resource for cross-group work. So origami has to compensate and work with a collection of designers across the organization. So some in customer products there, whether that's specialist titles, looking at ft.com or internal, but then also editorial, commercial design, and brand. It makes it really hard to prioritize system-wide or designer-led changes because all of these people individually are product-driven. And it also means that we're relying on the goodwill of the designers in each of these groups to do work that spans everyone. It leads to a lot of frustration and burnout, especially when you get a designer who's actually really enthusiastic, which is, quite sad. And so we need to figure out a team structure or a process that allows us to embed reusable capabilities into product teams' roadmap, to be proactive instead of reactive, to prioritize those product requests accordingly alongside those sort of longer-term roadmaps or design-driven initiatives. So we can audit our components and make system-wide changes and decide those customization options that are cross-brand. And it also means that we need to figure out how to allocate dedicated time. whether that's designer time or engineering time. Origami is a team of 2 currently engineers, but we have engineers all across the organization contributing to Origami. So the answer might not be to grow Origami, but figure out a process so that we can dedicate time elsewhere. So to summarize, I think a shared design system is the best thing since sliced bread. I'm really sorry about the metaphor. It's my first time trying to talk with a metaphor. We've seen how a design system inclusive of reusable components provides huge value. We're able to do more with less, focus on what adds value, collaborate effectively together to build a component once in a way that can deliver a consistent and trusted user experience for our readers, and that's whether we're working across groups or with third parties. But we only support core and internal brands right now with Origami. Customization options are limited, but design systems can empower creativity, enable bespoke experiences, and support unique brand identities. There's a huge potential, I think, at the FT to improve our shared capabilities, to support new contexts like specialist title brands or new product features within existing brands. By scaling reusable components in a way that we're able to support product experiences that we wouldn't otherwise be able to. And the technology and the techniques are there. Other companies are adopting them. But again, Origami is just a team of 2 engineers, part-time delivery at the moment. We can't scale our design system alone. To steal an analogy, Origami as a team is the glue, not the glue, the gluten in the dough that binds lots of teams at the FT together to get work done collectively. But glue work only goes so far. To scale our reusable components, we need to invest. We need to invest in relevant teams, a la Origami, our processes and ways of working. Not so much with baking bread, though. You can do that on your own. It's way more relaxing than trying to manage a design system. Thanks.